Do we create our own suffering? That seems the most unfair thing to say in a world where we experience, when we see other people suffering wars, random acts of violence, horrible things like terminal illnesses happening. How could anyone dare to say that we create our own suffering? Well, that's a fair point. And the reason why I'm making this video is because someone got really pissed off at me because I said that. And I want to clarify what is meant by that and how empowering it is and how frustrating and how much all your negative emotions, all your disempowerment, all your feeling like a victim is based on the idea, on the thoughts that you are the victim of external circumstance that is imposing on you your suffering. That is not true. There's a lot of people in this world who live horrible things and they still were able to, let's say, forgive. For example, I live in Berlin, Germany, and literally a few meters from here, there's the Museum of Terror. And it's just a way of remembering all the horrible things humans have lived in this place. So I don't lightly saying that we create our own suffering. I understand how it could look otherwise. And I'm not saying that people deserve what happened to them or anything like that. I'm not going there. I'm talking about your subjective experience, about your freedom, about your life. Let's not talk about other people's life. Let's talk about your life. That's where freedom comes from. Let's stop having discussions about if this is fair or unfair, or what is the cause for these things to happen, or if someone will have a karmic imprint that will make them suffer because they did wrong things. No, let's not go there. That's still mental stuff. Let's go to this moment. Let's talk about your suffering now. Let's talk about how you are unnoticeably feeling a victim of a chaos, of a world out there that is inflicting on you suffering. Just see how your mind is telling you that. Because these people, that people did this, because you don't have this, because you need that, because all these reasons why we suffer. Be honest. And realize that they are a position, a standpoint we take. And how you always have a choice. And there's people who have survived the Holocaust and they forgave. And they are at peace. There's people in Tibet who survive long tortures for many, many years, and they realize they cannot afford a standpoint where they are victims. Otherwise, you'll suffer endlessly. And there's these beautiful people who show us that we have the capacity to choose a different point of view. That point of view is to be open. That point of view is compassion, actually. That point of view is the empowering recognition that you don't need to believe everything your mind tells you. That what your mind thinks is not necessarily the truth, and you don't have to believe it. That's what meditation is intended for you to find that freedom, for you to sit and give yourself the permission to rest beyond your own mind. It's just that easy. Your mind is just like a TV that is on and it's talking about the news and how these horrible things in this horrible world. Well, you realize that what you're hearing is a point of view. There may be a fact behind, but one thing is the fact and another thing is an interpretation. And news are interpretations. Is that point clear? It's a very important one. Otherwise we think, no, but because this is happening. What's happening? Something's happening, for for sure. And you may have to react to it sometimes. I don't mean to be passive towards other people's suffering. Actually, this whole video, this whole channel, this video specifically is meant to hopefully alleviate suffering from you by understanding, by giving you the chance to explore something that you may have not been invited your whole life to do, like opening your attention and resting in just awareness of this moment. And your mind, you are not your mind. You're not even your body. And as strange as this may seem to think about, which is a very strange thought to have, it's a very, very direct experience you're living already. Underlying this mental activity, there is peace. There is a state of rest in you. And that state of rest is beyond suffering. So hopefully if you release your rigid focus on your mind and you just rest, and whatever happens is just happening, you may have the chance to observe this correlation between how your interpretations of the world are creating an experience, an emotional experience in you. But if you are a bit more direct in your observation, will realize that yes, there is a fact. There may be someone suffering. There may be someone around you that needs you. Just, you don't need to suffer. You're not helping anyone by suffering. It doesn't make you a more compassionate being to suffer. Huge misunderstanding of religion. You can just, and you actually are the most compassionate when you are just clearly feeling and you notice there's no boundaries between you and anyone else suffering. But let's stay in the context of your own personal experience. Can you release yourself, your grip on your mind? Can you let your mind pass like any sound around you? Can you, all the stories that tells you who you are, what you are this body, and this body is old, and you're maybe suffering from this experience in my leg that we could call pain, and pain is bad, and I reject it and I suffer, and I have no escape from that, and no doctor will give you a pill that is good enough to stop the suffering. There is no place you could run on earth. There is no moment in the future you could escape to, away from the way you are unconsciously choosing to experience this moment. So make it a conscious decision. And you do that by acknowledging every little movement of your mind, every tiny experience of what's crossing your mind. Be aware of that. Most people are not aware of that, especially people who are deluded, and in general people who are suffering. Because in order to suffer, you will find, and this is something I don't want you to believe me, this is something I want you to explore, that every time you will find yourself suffering, you will realize that there is a thought throwing wood to the fire. And if you follow that thought, you may get to a more intimidating thoughts and beliefs and fears of death or whatever. But if you stay there, just standing to the experience, you will find at some point experientially, you will realize that you are free from your mind. It's not even your mind, you could say at some point. It is just something that is happening. And as strange as that may sound, it is freedom. It is freedom. The only freedom we find is the freedom from our own mind. And when you free your mind becomes alert and compassionate. And your body cares about other bodies. Suffering makes us it locked us into a jail where we become detached in the bad sense of the word. We become distant to other people's feelings. When you are open, you become connected to other people's feelings. So the statement, we create our own suffering, is not meant to disconnect yourself from the suffering of other people. On the contrary, to be so brave, so ready to face anything, that you dare to face other people's suffering, but most importantly, your own suffering. The suffering that we relate to the emotions felt by this body, the emotions that we relate to this body, and the thoughts that we have, that kind of suffering should be the main focus. Because as you go outside, things become very complicated and the mind takes control. So what nobody does, especially when you're suffering, realize that you're not really able to observe your mind moment by moment. So do it and see what happens. What happens if you go all day just noticing that voice without judging it, because I will be thinking again. Just not reacting to it, not buying the thoughts. It's an unusual experience for most people, so I strongly suggest you to make time for it. Sit and don't let anything distract you, and just face your mind. And in the beginning it may feel even boring, or may even feel scary to hear the thoughts in your mind. But if you stay long enough, something's gonna crack, and you're gonna find yourself, you're gonna start smelling a fragrance of a peace, of a joy that is deeper than any suffering you could experience. So you could find peace even in distress, even with a mind that is telling you should suffer, even with a body that is telling you should suffer. It's mostly the mind, but the body sometimes it feels that it's also not helping you, right? If you just become the observer, neutral and clear, you will find yourself gravitating towards peace and love and compassion and joy. Because only a life lived like that is worth living. You deserve to be free. You deserve to live in peace. Always, no matter what. In love with life. In love with this moment. In love with everyone and everything.